Have you ever looked at someone in a toxic relationship and wondered one simple question? Why don't they just leave? From the outside, the answer often seems obvious. The manipulation is visible, the arguments are constant, the emotional pain is undeniable. Yet millions of intelligent, compassionate, and emotionally capable people remain trapped in relationships they know are hurting them. This isn't because they're weak. It's because toxic relationships don't begin with abuse. They begin with connection. And understanding that difference changes everything. Today, we're exploring the psychology behind toxic relationships, why they form, why they're so difficult to escape, and what happens inside the human mind when love and pain become emotionally intertwined. Every healthy relationship begins with trust. Ironically, so do most unhealthy ones. Very few toxic people introduce themselves by being controlling, manipulative, or emotionally abusive. Instead, they often appear incredibly attentive, affectionate, and deeply interested in the other person. Psychologists sometimes refer to this early stage as idealization. The attention feels exciting. The compliments seem endless. The emotional connection develops quickly. For someone who has experienced loneliness, rejection, or emotional neglect, this intense affection can feel like finally finding home. The brain responds by releasing chemicals such as dopamine and oxytocin, neurochemicals associated with pleasure, attachment, and bonding. Long before the relationship becomes unhealthy, the attachment has already formed. And once emotional attachment exists, objectivity becomes surprisingly difficult. One of the defining characteristics of toxic relationships is that they rarely become toxic overnight. Instead, the unhealthy behavior arrives gradually. A small criticism here, a jealous comment there, a request to spend less time with friends. An apology follows, then another incident, then another apology. This gradual escalation is psychologically significant. If abusive behavior appeared immediately, most people would leave. Instead, the brain adapts little by little. Psychologists call this normalization. Each small compromise becomes the new standard. Eventually, behavior that once felt shocking begins to feel strangely ordinary, not because it's healthy, but because it became familiar. One of the most misunderstood aspects of toxic relationships is why leaving feels so incredibly difficult. The answer isn't simply love, it's conditioning. Healthy relationships create predictable emotional experiences. Toxic relationships create unpredictable ones. One day there's affection, the next day there's distance. One moment there's kindness, the next comes criticism. This unpredictability creates what's known as intermittent reinforcement. Behavioral psychology has shown that unpredictable rewards are often more psychologically compelling than predictable ones. The uncertainty keeps people hoping. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe they'll become the person they were in the beginning. That hope becomes emotionally addictive. The person isn't chasing the current relationship. They're chasing the memory of what it once felt like. One of the strongest psychological forces inside toxic relationships is something called a trauma bond. Despite the name, trauma bonding doesn't mean bonding over shared trauma. Instead, it describes a powerful emotional attachment that forms through repeated cycles of affection, fear, conflict, and reconciliation. Pain becomes followed by relief. Conflict becomes followed by affection. The emotional roller coaster strengthens attachment instead of weakening it. Ironically, the very behavior causing emotional pain also becomes the source of emotional comfort. This creates enormous confusion. Victims often begin questioning themselves instead of questioning the relationship. Toxic relationships frequently involve another powerful psychological tactic: gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't simply lying, It's manipulating someone into questioning their own memory, emotions, or perception of reality. Statements like, "You're too sensitive," "That never happened," "You're imagining things," slowly erode self-confidence. Over time, people stop trusting themselves, and when you stop trusting your own judgment, you naturally begin depending on someone else's version of reality. That's exactly what manipulation requires. People often assume toxic relationships happen only to individuals with low self-esteem. Reality is far more complex. Anyone can become emotionally attached under the right circumstances. However, people with strong internal self-worth usually recover more quickly because their identity exists outside the relationship. Those whose self-worth depends heavily on external validation may feel as though leaving the relationship means losing themselves. That's why healing is never just about ending the relationship, it's about rebuilding identity. Another reason people remain in toxic relationships is surprisingly simple: the unknown. Our brains naturally prefer familiar discomfort over unfamiliar uncertainty. Even painful situations become psychologically predictable. Leaving means facing loneliness, uncertainty, grief, new routines. For many people, that uncertainty feels scarier than continuing with what they already know. The mind confuses familiarity with safety, but they aren't the same thing. Recovery begins with one important realization. You cannot heal in the same environment that's teaching you to doubt yourself. Healing often starts quietly, setting boundaries, reconnecting with supportive friends, seeking therapy or trusted guidance, rediscovering hobbies, learning to enjoy solitude, keeping promises to yourself. Each small decision rebuilds something manipulation slowly erased: self-trust. Eventually, confidence returns. Not because someone else gives it back, but because you earn it. Healthy relationships feel remarkably different. They don't require constant emotional guessing. You don't feel afraid to express yourself. Conflict exists, but respect remains. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're honored. Trust grows steadily instead of disappearing overnight. Most importantly, healthy love allows you to become more yourself, not less. If a relationship consistently demands that you shrink your personality, ignore your intuition, or abandon your values, it isn't strengthening your identity, it's replacing it. Perhaps the greatest lesson about toxic relationships is this: love should never require losing yourself. Real love doesn't thrive on fear. It doesn't demand constant proof. It doesn't manipulate your reality. Instead, healthy love creates safety. It creates trust. It creates freedom. And while leaving a toxic relationship may feel like losing everything, it may actually be the first step toward finding yourself again. Because the healthiest relationships don't convince you that you're incomplete. They remind you that you were worthy all along. Thank you for watching WonderVerse. If you enjoy exploring the psychology behind human behavior, subscribe and join us for more journeys into the hidden patterns of the human mind.